Hello, everyone. My name is William Bell, Executive Vice President of Products. Today, I have my friends at Pliops, Mr. Grant Jacobson, Senior Director of Strategic Alliances. Welcome, Grant.
Thanks, William. Great to be here. Welcome, everyone.
Awesome. All right. And today, we're going to talk about how you, as a partner of phoenixNAP or potential partner of phoenixNAP, can leverage the integrations and technologies that we're working on to help boost your client's workload performance, right? I think anytime you can step into an organization and tell them confidently that you can make them more efficient, more cost effective, or boost the performance of what they currently have, you have a winning solution in your hands, right? And so we'll go to the next slide. We're going to start off by trying to just, level set with, actually, we're going to do a gift card. Yeah, by the way, if you stay to the end, we're going to do a gift card, $250 giveaway. We'll send that out after the presentation. So we'll be contacting you via email. And we want to start off with a poll question just to try to understand, what your clients are working with today. Are you in a position where you have data intensive workloads that you're helping your clients find homes for, and are they struggling, right? So if you just tap and answer any of that apply there, that would be great. It'll help us understand and kind of craft today's presentation to better fit the audience. All right, let's go ahead and close that down. As expected, a lot of people dealing with analytics, relational databases. It's the bread and butter of most workloads today, but increasingly we're seeing a lot of unstructured data, NoSQL, other high performance computing and AI ML workloads kind of coming to the forefront, really driving a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about with the real-time data processing and the like. Next slide. Oh, we have another poll question. So if you could jump in here and answer this one for me as well. As the your customers are building out these applications and workloads, are there things that you see in your environment that are big problem points that can really help drive home, what we're going to talk about today, and kind of craft that and make it exactly for your organization? All right, you can go ahead and close that down on Maria. And we'll move on to the next slide. So ultimately, why are we here, right? What we all know, if you've been in the data infrastructure market for any period of time, data is growing at a rapid pace, right? The storage of that data is commonly talked about. How do we store zettabytes of data, 175 zettabytes by 2025? So much data is being generated. But ultimately, what we are trying to figure out more comprehensively, it's this real-time data generation and the need to analyze it that's kind of taking over the lives of the infrastructure and operations people that are running these workloads, right? It's still to some extent about storing the data, that a lot of people have this solved, confidently feel like they have the storage of the data that they're generating solved, but they're a lot less confident in their ability to do anything with that data other than store it and maybe look up occasionally specific pieces of information. As companies grow, they want to do more with this data and they want to process it. And that's really where they start to run into bottlenecks. Next slide. And so really this real-time generation of real-time data generation is being driven by the things that you've probably been talking to your customers about. This idea of digital transformation and tapping into the data that they're generating about their business and about their consumer, so that they can, so you, your customer, can find those patterns in their business that can really help transform the actual, revenue generation, profitability, and efficiency, right? And most people are doing this by creating interactions, whether they're B2B through APIs or B2C through apps and other things like that are creating these like real-time interactions where data is being exchanged and intelligence is being gathered. And that intelligence is only as good as your ability to report on it, to create insights out of it. And if you can't do that because of infrastructure challenges, which is pretty common, one of the pretty common pain points around diving into this data and manipulating it, you're stuck. Next slide. And so as you work with your customers, you have to find ways to help them turn all of this data generation into the value for their business, right? You want to improve their operations. Some examples listed here: fraud detection, risk management, business analytics. Like, all these things are huge hot pain points inside of organizations. Everyone is focused on growth, right? Like, growing is a huge part of the digital business of today, right? I think that many people would probably agree that growth is almost too much in focus these days. Sometimes some of these other pieces are not being looked at the way they should be, but certainly dealing with your grown growth is a huge scalability problem. It's a huge infrastructure problem. So you need to find ways to grow the business, scale the business. That report that you created to report on 1,000 customers has to work for 100,000 customers. And that's where unique solutions are important. And so as you look at the other side of this kind of graphic here, finding ways to be innovative with that data and leverage it to create insights to reduce cost and be more efficient, whether directly or indirectly, is very important. And I think that's, before Grant gets into his stuff about Pliops, I think that's a huge common thread about what we're going to talk about today, is that there's an element of reducing the cost, and being more efficient with the infrastructure that you are consuming. But it's also about, once you've done that, if you still meet the needs of your business to find more efficient ways to do all the things on the left, improve, grow, etc., you start to get real heavy value out of some of these investments. Next slide. So as you look at the kind of A to Z side of what your customers are dealing with, a lot of times you get stuck in kind of 1 and 2. Either I'm trying to scale my business and I can't do it, or I think I can do it, I need to buy some stuff to get there. Why is this so expensive, right? Like, why is achieving this goal of mine so expensive, right? Can I even do it? We talk to customers all the time. They're like, I don't even know if I can get the insights that I need out of the data that I'm generating, because I'm not sure that it's even cost effective to do it. It might be cost prohibitive, in fact, to do it. But increasingly, we're starting to see all these other kind of major problems creep up with the real-time data generation and understanding the data. One of those major pillars is privacy and user information privacy. And I'm gonna say just information security in general, right? Like, finding that needle in a haystack, protecting that one piece of data that entered your environment and you didn't know it entered your environment. I can't tell you, like, I feel bad sometimes. Certainly there are some yahoos out there that run, really cruddy information security postures, and they get hacked and whatever happens. But I can tell you that there's a lot of companies out there that suffer from breaches that are good organizations with good security posture. They are just generating so much data from so many places that understanding what they have becomes a near impossibility. And so the things we're talking about today at least start them down the road of bridging that gap. And then the last one, I think, is this rate of change problem, velocity of the organization. The rate of change in many markets, and specifically in technical markets, software, service, these types of things, is so insane that people really struggle to stay competitive in those market segments. It's easier to disrupt. And if you've grown to a point where you have an organization where you feel like you're in your market, that you're a leader of sorts, even if not the leader, staying there becomes a very difficult proposition. And you need to be focused on finding ways to use all the stuff that you have, the infrastructure, the assets, the data, to find the right insights to change your business and make those changes where necessary to survive. Next slide. So this is a typical way of how people go about solving this problem, right? So some application guy comes in and says, oh my gosh, we need more resources, we aren't keeping up. And the customer or the internal IT department, either if they're doing things in a data center and they're trying to scale with their own co-location, their own infrastructure, buying it, integrating it, getting it online, like they're in a really bad spot when that happens, because especially in today's world, supply chain restriction all over the place, probably not getting better till 2024 plus, right? They're just stuck. Potentially they're in a hyperscaler that are solving these problems with air quotes, because scale is still a thing where it's not infinite, regardless of what people think. They go and they just scale out horizontally, cluster everything, build new types of ways of processing data and data pipelines, and then they end up with just budgets that are just outrageous to try to solve this problem for the applications team, right? They create creative software solutions, whether they're third party or they're developed internally, to solve these problems, but they still need resources to try to make that happen. They put more grandiose infrastructure at play, just the bare bones, NVMe's across the board, biggest CPUs they can find, right? Like, but the technology, the underlying technology of those basic components is changing. It's just not, they're not able to focus on the problems in the way that other specialized infrastructure components can, right? And we may talk about this later in the presentation, but like, I think of GPUs as a perfect example. Like, certainly CPUs can do the work, most of it, of GPUs. They just orders of magnitude of delta between the efficiency of performing those operations, right? And that's what we're going to talk about today, as the team from Pliops comes on and talks about what they're doing around storage acceleration specifically, and or application acceleration by better data management, right? We have partnered together to find ways to break this cycle. So if we move to the next slide, we're going to talk about exactly how we can help, as a team, Pliops and pNAP, hit those pillars on the right square, right? Like, we're going to help your customers find ways to increase performance. We're going to improve their reliability, or at minimum create less sacrifices for them to achieve that same reliability, we're going to help with that data growth and capacity and ultimately give your customers solutions that will make them more efficient so that they can wrap all that efficiency back in to doing better work with the stuff that their core line of business, right? And so if we go to the next slide, I'm going to turn it over here to my buddy Grant, and he's going to walk through the Pliops solution and how it can help specifically on the technical side, and then I'll wrap it back at the end about what we're doing together. Take it away, Grant.
Hey, thanks, William. Hello, everyone. So this is a picture of the Pliops server add-in card. We call that the Extreme Data Processor, or XDP. And what we're doing today is talking about this in the context of a phoenixNAP bare metal instance. So if you're familiar with phoenixNAP, think of the great array of instances available, and now we're adding this Pliops card to the instance itself. And so that's what where all this extra goodness comes from. A little background about the card. This is a PCIe server add-in card, as I mentioned. It is not storage, but really a specialized data processor, hence the name Extreme Data Processor. The idea here is to enable the kinds of things that William was just talking about in a more cost-effective way. So how do you get more performance? How do you get higher reliability, more scalability, a more efficient environment to run those workloads? So this really is the latest state-of-the-art type of technology. If you think about GPUs, as William mentioned, that's really an offload technology. It's using GPUs instead of the CPU. Well, this is similar as a specialized processor card to offload the CPU to provide the equivalent of even around 500 Xeon Gold cores to deliver that capability. So it's a distributed type of approach here, but this is really the future of architecture going forward. So let's get into that with the next slide. So this Pliops-powered bare metal cloud instance here from phoenixNAP is really a new accelerated instance, and it's really designed to take advantage or to serve these data-intensive workloads that your customers have, storage hungry, in other words, a lot of storage, and really zeroing in on the performance sensitivity around those workloads. So typically a database, for example, where speed is essential. So it's not for everything, but it is really, and I'll get into this, it is really around data intensive workloads. So today there is a availability of up to 48 terabytes for that instance, and soon we'll be working together to enable up to 120 terabytes instance. That may sound like a lot, but as this data growth is the volume of data growing, and with the need for real time, as William was talking about, 120 is actually a pretty good fit. And again, this is really going to work with any of the applications, the workloads that your customers have without any changes, or without any changes beyond just adding this card to the instance. So it's really that simple, it's really that seamless. And the idea, of course, is to make it simple. So let's get into that with the next slide. So some of the industries or the segments where there are customers taking advantage of this include finance, fintech, advertising, ad tech. I won't read the list here, but it's really anywhere there is data intensive workloads, where there's a lot of data, where there's heavy transactions. Those transactions can be read heavy, could be write heavy, could be read write, mixed workloads, but just where there's a lot of transactions and lots of data. So this is just a sample. It's really quite broad where this need is. So if your customers are in a segment not on this slide, it's probably still okay if it's a heavy data intensive capability. Next. The other way to look at this is to show you the kinds of workloads across those industry segments. And this is really, for example, relational databases that I'm showing here in the upper left. So if your customers are running Postgres or MySQL or MariaDB and so on, that's a great example. There are other relational databases not on the slide that also work. There is a set of NoSQL databases here on the upper right. These are a few, but some of the common ones. Also very good fit here. Storage as a service showing you in the bottom left, and also analytics. William was talking about analytics and AI and so on. Splunk, Spark, Elastic are some of the top ones. There are others, but this just gives you a kind of a granular view of the type of workloads that are a great fit here. Next slide. So what can we do? William mentioned the pillars of performance, reliability, capacity, efficiency, and that's really where this is enabled. So we're talking about 3 to 10x of performance increase, again, with no changes. I will talk about this next one in more detail, but DFP is drive fail protection. What is that? That is integrated RAID 5 capability within the instance delivered by this card, and that is the data protection built in and ensuring this high reliability. So there are technical benefits that I'll talk about, but also your clients are very sensitive to productivity, I will tell you. So if they lose a drive and it takes a day or two or longer to rebuild it, that's going to impact. It's going to impact the performance of the workload, but it's also going to put a dent in the productivity. Capacity is another area where this is beneficial. So you're provisioning X level of capacity, but this is actually going to deliver up to 6x more capacity with the same SSDs, and I'll get into that. All of this taken together makes it more reliable, more efficient, and therefore more cost effective. Next slide. One example here of what we're talking about with respect to performance, MariaDB, one of the databases that we're supporting here, queries per second, and this is a comparison between software RAID 0 with no protection to the XDP based drive fail protection capability in terms of queries per second. So we're showing you on the left a 2.3x increase in performance with no changes other than adding this card to the environment. So and the other place that shows up really well is in terms of latency. So we're showing 83% reduction in that latency, again, compared to software RAID 0. The thing I'll emphasize is not only is this performance acceleration and benefit, but this is data protected performance because it does include that integrated RAID 5 capability. So you're getting all of this together with no compromise. Next slide. One more way to show performance benefit, and here this is a comparison against hardware RAID 5 because your customers are interested in not losing data. So RAID 5, very traditional type of solution there. We're showing 11x across the board here. So this is mixed workload, read, write, and total benefit here in terms of throughput per second, megabytes per second here, 11 times. Again, no changes other than adding this card and extracting more value out of that workload. And again, this is full performance with that data protection and getting all the benefits out of that. Next slide. So let's talk a little more about this drive fail protection. So not uncommon to see a drive fault. The difference here is because many organizations use RAID 5 or RAID 10. Here we're showing a comparison between the Pliops-Powered instance versus the RAID 0 or RAID 5. So two key messages here: 2.5 times more performance for this particular workload. And when there is a drive failure, where it says SSD crash, you'll see there's really just a minimal impact on performance, something like maybe 20% only, as opposed to all the way down, which is what you're seeing here with RAID 5. And the other thing is the very fast rebuild going on for that drive failure, so you're getting back to your high performance. So high performance, even during the rebuild, is another key benefit here, and especially with respect to productivity. And especially when you think about now drives getting larger, so the blast radius is much bigger. People worry about that. Maybe they don't want to deploy these higher capacity drives. Now it is perfectly fine to do that, where you're getting high performance and protection at the same time here. So I want to say, in fact, the next slide has that message. So showing you the performance difference during the rebuild, 23x for that workload compared to hardware RAID 5. That's amazing. It's actually stunning because the world doesn't work that way. Well, now it can. And the reason for that, by the way, to get a little technical, is that when a drive fails, normally to rebuild that with these traditional RAID 5 solutions, they're rebuilding the entire drive. That's block by block, takes a long time. In this case, we're only rebuilding the impacted data, and that's why it rebuilds fast, and that's why it recovers quickly. Showing you on the right here, that's say, for example, 7 minutes a terabyte compared to 35 minutes a terabyte. So 20% of the time only for that same issue, again, without changing anything, just having the card in there. So this is great for your client's QoS. It's excellent for higher capacity drives, and delivers that no compromise performance. Next slide. Yeah, the other benefit we've been talking about here is capacity. I mentioned up to 6 times. Here we're showing you a comparison of hardware RAID 10 with the Pliops XDP based service. And you'll see in this case, it's 11 terabytes usable space because there is massive penalty with hardware RAID 10 just to get that protection. And on the right, you're seeing up to 6x increase, 67 terabytes of usable space. How does that happen? Most of the data workloads are running with compressible data. And built into the card is inline compression with up to 3x compression gains for that data. So you can actually turn those SSDs into much higher usable storage with this capability. The other very important place where you can get capacity benefits for your customers is that the typical use, whatever size SSD there is, most organizations do not fill those up. And the reason for that is they will have a huge performance impact as they increase that fill rate up to 100%. So they tend to run maybe half or a little more than half because they're going to run into that performance problem. With the Pliops-based service, that is not going to happen. In fact, customers can very confidently fill up their drives and not have any performance impact. In fact, they get very consistent performance no matter what the fill level is in those drives. So here you could do 95%, not a problem, and you get even more space reclaimed out of that and more value, as it says here, per terabyte of data. Next slide. And so that's back to you, William.
Absolutely. Thank you, Grant. Sorry, I had the mute monster there. So if you guys on the call are not familiar with the bare metal cloud, it's been mentioned a few times throughout this presentation. Essentially, we've built an on-demand metal as a service platform where customers can leverage DevOps-oriented tools, APIs, user interface, whatever they want, to instantiate dedicated metal infrastructure instantly and programmatically manipulate network, storage, etc., to build out a solution. If we go to the next slide, when we look at how we wrap this up and we're delivering the Pliops technology in bare metal cloud, to us, it looks like an instance type that we would of any generic shape or model. However, the XDP card is on board and it's got a larger amount of NVMe drives present so that you can build high performance data storage applications, right? And ultimately, all the stuff that Grant talked about can be delivered to your customer for a POC or production in a click of a button, right? And I think that the idea for me as a technician of the past, right, an actual operator, to be able to come in and get on-demand infrastructure as a service, but still have the ability to do whatever I want with that infrastructure without any chains of any platform telling me, well, okay, you can have a dedicated server. I mean, there's metal instances in AWS, but like they're trapped behind the platform of AWS and all the cost and complexity that goes along with that platform, on top of being abhorrently expensive, right? Just in themselves. So like, I think that when from a phoenixNAP perspective, we saw this as an opportunity to empower organizations to up-level their infrastructure deployment methodologies, but without having to just accept that I'm going to move all my applications to a public cloud. Everything's going to be delivered as a service, and I'm basically stuck doing whatever that public cloud provider wants me to do, right? And with Pliops and phoenixNAP together, we're able to solve for extremely difficult data challenges, right? Where customers are scratching their head going, man, I might be able to solve this, but it's going to cost me an arm and a leg, or I don't think it's possible to fix, right? And so, doing all of this extremely cost effectively, that's a lot of horsepower. If you look at the details of that instance, right, you're getting 48 physical cores, a quarter of a terabyte of RAM, 50 terabytes essentially of NVMe, and all of the performance boosts and compression and data boosts. That's 48 terabyte, call it raw usable. By the time you're done with compression and data reduction, as well as other types of efficiency gains the XDP card is placing on those drives, you could end up with a lot more capacity than that and a lot more performance for that capacity than you would have in just an instance that had a few NVMe drives in it. Next slide. And so when you're talking to your customers, this is the slide that everyone needs to screenshot, right? This is the one for the partners on the call where you can say, okay, what do my customers look like? You know, what kind of industries can I target? We've tried to make this easy for you, right? These are the places that we know have significant challenges with real-time data generation, right? The middle, these are the things that we can do with those companies to help them get meet the needs of their applications. And ultimately, if a customer is looking at like for the partners on the call, if they're quoting out RAID controllers for NVMe drives, or they're looking for high performance computing instances, or different types of accelerators, if they're buying a lot of GPUs, that's a good indicator, right? That some workload in there is pretty intense, right? And in those areas, these Pliops-powered instances can make real difference to their business. And, you know, I think for the partners, you want to be the hero, man. Like, this is a great way to start getting involved in some of those accounts that maybe you're a little scared or intimidated about their size, their data generation, their infrastructure, and start recommending really core solutions that can potentially change that business's direction. Next slide. So your customers get this combined solution from pNAP and Pliops. It's delivered as a service instantaneously. You don't have to wait for inventory, supply chain, this, that, and the other. It's going to be 8 weeks, and then we'll get it a server, then you have to get it racked, and then you have to get through all this with that customer, right? No need for that, right? Enhancing all of those value points, speed of delivery, cost effectiveness, etc. Delivering all of that via API, which is going to make those next gen infrastructure teams super happy, automation, everything. Paying only for what you're using, right? The minimum consumption model of this Pliops enabled instances is month to month. You can get them month to month. Some of our other instances you can get by the hour, right? And ultimately, in those cases, you're paying for what you're using. If you want to get a better price, you can commit for a long period of time. And when you deploy with pNAP, 15 terabytes of outbound transfer is free in every single region. So for a lot of companies, you know, that are shipping workloads back and forth to do data processing, that's going to be plenty. And the bandwidth is super cost effective if you need it more, like partial cents of a gig compared to 8-9 cents a gig in the hyperscalers. Next. So we are running a promotion right now. If you have a customer that you think might be a fit, right? We are sponsoring POCs. Pliops, pNAP together are sponsoring POCs on phoenixNAP Bare Metal Cloud so that your customer can actually, we'll work together to figure out what kind of application they want to test. We'll validate it, make sure that we think that they can see an improvement. And if we think they can, we will provision that instance for them so that they can take it for a test drive, or multiple instances if it's a large application. There's no risk to you as the partner for that. There's no risk to the customer for that other than their time. And if it works, it can change. It could be paradigm shift for those organizations. Next. All right, we're gonna launch the final call. If you think that you could benefit from this combined solution, please click yes, you want to call, or you know, we want a product sheet. We're happy to get those things to you. You know, really glad you guys came out. We're going to do some question and answering here at the end so that everybody can get their questions in. If you have any that anything didn't make sense, pop them in the questions there. No question is too small, too crazy, right? We'll try to answer them. All right. We got first one. I think we want to move to the next slide. It's question time, yeah. So the first one we got, Grant, I think it's best for you. Does Pliops XDP require additional maintenance technical support? Like, do you have to buy anything else for it to work?
Not at all. It's actually very simple. It's just one more component in the instance, and it's really that's
yeah,
it.
There's no like overriding software license that you have to pay for every year till the end of time, et cetera, et cetera.
That's right.
It's all delivered as part of the phoenixNAP bare metal cloud instance. The cost of that instance includes Pliops and all of its capabilities for the capacity of what that card can do, right? And
that's right. And as I said, there's no changes even for your customer to just bring their just nothing needed in terms of changes, just works.
Yeah, 100%. And then the next one was, you talked about like dry fall protection and extending the life. Can you talk about how some of that works in terms of both on the dry fall protection side and on the drive life extension side?
Yes, that's a great question. So this is really built in, so it's not an extra thing or an extra software. It just works, and the way it works is the XDP card is actually managing the data flow between the application and those SSDs. So we're controlling and we're shaping the data as it writes to those drives. So in case something fails, we know where the data is, we know what to rebuild, or I should say the XDP does, and it just happens automatically when it detects a failure. So that's important. And as I mentioned, the rebuild times are ultra fast because it's only rebuilding the data that's been impacted. The other thing I didn't mention is that the XDP card actually reduces the risk of failure because of how we are controlling that data, shaping and writing the data. So any kind of random read or random write gets controlled from the point of view of SSDs as sequential writes. So we're not thrashing those SSDs, and so there's going to be a benefit in terms of preventing or reducing the risk of those failures, actually improving the endurance of the drives while we're doing that, and therefore extending the life of that. And that's important from a productivity point of view. Again, thinking about business value for your customers is that no one likes drive fail issues, and having the drives last even longer is a kind of a value benefit for that workload.
Awesome. I think that was all the questions we had. If there's anybody that has any questions, jump them in right here last second. If not, thank you everyone for taking the time out of your day to listen to us chit chat. I think that what we presented can be really compelling for your customer. If you have any questions, even if you're just unsure about what to ask, how to ask it, reach out, let us know. We'll hook you up with that. As I mentioned it earlier, we are giving out that $250 Amazon gift card. Our partner team will reach out after this call to the winner. Make sure to get that in your hands, digital email version, so it'll happen instantly. And the next time we'll see you on the next call. Thank you so much.
Thank you.